I'm going to have everybody muted. So if you do want to speak, absolutely you're welcome to, and you'll have to unmute yourself. And if you're on a cell phone, the unmute command is *6. Get started here in just a minute. Well, we're right at 3:30, but I'm going to give it just another minute because we've still got a few more folks coming on. So, okay. Well, I tell you what, we'll go ahead and get started. I assume you can hear me okay. Um, Anyway, welcome everybody. As I think probably all of you know, I'm Brian DeBruin, and I'm the director of the organization. So you can see the agenda we've got up here today. We're going to do quite a bit of talking about workforce development and education and those kind of things. Just want to double check here. Just doing a quick look to see who's on. Yeah, Mike Estergaard is on. So good. All right. Okay, well, let's go ahead and get started, everybody. If I can get my screen to progress here. So, uh, one of the things that CHN is doing is to have these various initiatives, and as you all know, been very active in hydrogen fueling, hydrogen fleets, that kind of thing. And of course, the podcast, you're all aware of that. We've got 83 episodes out there now. But education is something that we're really focusing on right now. I am on the board of an organization called Horizon Education. We'll talk about that a little bit. And so there's been some recent developments there. And so we're going to talk about that today. So education can be a lot of things. I mean, I go around, I speak at various functions and things like that, various webinars and so forth. But the other part of that is workforce development. And that is something that we included in this fueling station grant that we just got from the Department of Transportation. That was awarded on January 11th. And because CSU is involved, we thought, well, it'd be a good idea to have CSU do curriculum and training and teaching and stuff at the three different CSU campuses, the Pueblo, the Denver campus at Spur, as well as, of course, at Fort Collins. But in addition to that, CSU also does their own education outreach. And Mike Estergaard is on, and he's going to talk about that. And I'll introduce him in just a minute. But one of the things that has kind of caught all of our attention is this whole idea of providing training kits, hardware kits, I guess I should say, as well as curriculum in the high schools for training students and engaging them. So Horizon Educational has a whole program around that, the STEM kits, the curriculum, and they also have student car racing. We'll talk about that a little bit. Um, so the Energy Institute is interested in pursuing that. So um, Horizon Educational, as I just mentioned, is a company. It's actually international. Their headquarters is in Prague, and they were founded in 2003 with the idea that they would bring these kits to schools and provide curriculum along with that for training. And in 2015, they got the idea to host student races of little radio controlled in some cases, other cases they're just running free, so to speak, hydrogen cars. And in doing that, they felt it would get greater engagement of the students because there's a competition. There's no better way to really get people's attention when they're trying to compete with their friends. But the other nice thing about that is that the students learn that design isn't just a one pass thing. As I know, and all of us who have any experience in engineering or in building things, you know that you have an idea, you commit to a design, you build it and you test it, and then you discover all of your unknown unknowns, so to speak. And so you do redesign. And that's another really big benefit of this racing series is that it encourages students to do problem solving, but then to kind of follow that up with real world kind of testing and discovering things and doing redesign. Now, the races have really grown in popularity there throughout the world. There's last count over 2,500 teams, about 20,000 students in about 20 different countries doing this. And so we've been interested in trying to bring that to Colorado and get a little competition going between some of the high schools here and instituting a program. So to further this, Horizon launched a nonprofit organization that they're calling the H2GP Foundation, which stands for Hydrogen Grand Prix. And that provides a vehicle for tax deductible funding to get corporate funding and those kind of things, corporate sponsorship for the races. And of course, like I said, it's tax deductible. All right. Oh, there's sorry, left that hanging. There's the website for that if you'd like to take a look. So, as I said, founded in 2003, these STEM kits, science, technology, engineering, and mathematic kits, and teaching materials are going to over 150 countries and engaging students from ages of 6 to 21 to develop renewable energy technology skills with the hands-on learning. And here you see younger students doing a small car. It's not radio controlled. You don't steer it. It's some of these races are just raced for either speed, who can finish the race the fastest, or longevity, who can run the longest. So they make fuel cell model cars, but it's more than that. They also have wind and solar demonstration kits um, for things like stationary fuel and so forth. And this really helps the teachers who may not be that well versed in the technology and the engineering and the latest things, but it provides them with the curriculum as well as the hardware behind that. So, as I said, the products all come with lesson plans and quizzes and instructional videos, and the idea is try to make it fun. And uh, it's really been very successful with a lot of students. All right, so they have three levels of racing depending on the different ages, and the most elaborate is shown there on the left. And I've shown this before, so some of you may recognize this slide. But the so-called Grand Prix Pro is a full radio controlled car. The students steer it. They steer it around a serpentine track. As the students after a number of years in the program, develop a little bit more expertise. They start having things like telemetry. I know when I went out and judged the the race that was out in California about a year and a half ago, I was really impressed with how some of the students actually could tell the state of charge of their hydrogen cylinders. They were getting other information back from the car, how much fuel they were using, because it is a bit of an endurance race. You can't push it the whole way because you'll run out of fuel. Like a lot of car races are that way. Then for more of the medium, I'll say, age of students, 10 to 16, um, there's a simpler car than that. It doesn't steer, but there's a lot of things that they can do to soup up the car, so to speak, to compete with their friends. And then even at the very young ages, you'll see the Grand Prix, so-called Explorer, the XPR there on the right. Um, those cars are often made from recycled material. Students will take like a water bottle to use as a chassis and so forth. And so those races are much simpler, of course, for that age group, but still really engaging for the students. So, as I said, really, uh, those of us who are in engineering know about this whole cycle of uh, defining the problem and coming up with a solution, and then building that and testing it, and then maybe repeating the process. And so these races really help the students develop those skills, and it really engages them because they're competing with their friends, and plus it's just a lot of fun. So CSU has expressed some interest in sponsoring some racing, and we're still working through getting sponsors and things like that. But the thought here, and I'm going to let Mike speak in just a minute, but CSU would obtain the track. There's the way this works is you use a gymnasium or something like that. You set up carpet, and then the track is basically the curb for each of the lanes. And of course, that would be something that would have to be set up and be housed and so forth. And then we're all going to be busy out enlisting schools, and we've got a few schools already interested. We'll talk about that. And then, of course, we need sponsors to help forego the cost, or not forego, but to underwrite, maybe I'll say, the cost of the teams and the cars for the students. So, without further ado, Mike, you'll have to unmute yourself, but Mike Estergaard is at the CSU Energy Institute up in Fort Collins, and he's the Education Outreach Coordinator. So, Mike, I'm going to turn this over to you. As a matter of fact, I'll stop sharing if you'd like to share some slides and just tell us your thoughts.
Yeah. Guys, hear me okay? I had some issues with my
Yeah,
headphones.
we hear you great.
Okay, cool. I don't have much in the way of slides to show you here, but I do want to kind of put a pitch out for this program and for a lot of the other clean energy stuff that we're seeing left and right here. For years now, schools have been, oh yeah, we'll get everybody ready for, the job market for clean energy, or there'll be just general engineering, and they're not realizing how far back you need to go on that. So Energy Institute here created my position last summer, or rather last spring, in order to kind of facilitate education as far back as we can go. So I work with students anywhere from first grade all the way to 12th, and then I coordinate with a whole bunch of college programs as well. One of the first spots in there that we've discussed at the beginning of my work here is making sure that in the end we have students who are at least scientifically literate, who understand design process, who understand, can apply that, make mistakes, learn from them, and move on in the greater scheme of things. And so I think that teachers are asked to do a lot. I know that teachers are asked to do a lot in this day and age. And so our goal is to make sure that their job is as easy as possible. So there's some groups I work with where I'm pretty much leading the whole day and they just find me a room. And there's some where I sit down with them months ahead of time and we figure out the curriculum to connect with that. But we're working to improve the workforce as well as kind of making a more scientifically literate group out there. So right now our program looks at, we have a set of electrolyzers / fuel cells as one of our mobile classroom labs. We call them learning labs, modules, if you prefer, that look specifically at the hydrogen and how we can collect this hydrogen. But we were looking for, that was really telling the science of it. And it's a pretty cool little setup. It's a game board, and you kind of connect everything together, and even with enough guidance, you can get a second grader to do that. And they really, because you're like legit doing science, and you cranking it and getting all the hydrogen stored, and then you burn it off, or quote, burn it off. I realize with engineers, you can't just say burn it off. Yeah, we go ahead and use that hydrogen to make electricity, and we either have it set off some LEDs, or we have it power fans or other motors to kind of do that work. And so the next logical progression here, because Horizon's one of the things that one of the companies that we work through, was this, and just kind of out of nowhere, I was like, oh, it's kind of interesting. And then I had been sitting on a couple of these meetings with Brian, and Brian had said at one point that he was on the connected with Horizon. And so we dug a little deeper, and we said, well, maybe this is something that Energy Institute and CSU would be kind of interested in putting their name with. So we're looking into it. Our hope is to get schools across the state into this. I think Colorado is a great spot for this clean energy kind of revolution we're seeing. We've to the point where Congress, the National Science Foundation is giving us money for it. So I think that if we're going to start with those kind of accolades, that we need to start digging deeper roots into our student body, so to speak. With that in mind, I already have a whole slew of grad students who saw this and were just like chomping at the bit to this. Grad students have no money. I don't have a lot of money in my program. And so the next obvious choice was like, well, who do we know who's in the hydrogen industry? And it's like, oh, Brian would know. And so got to talking with Brian, and kind of excited about where this might go. In addition to all this programming, we do a lot with hydrogen. We just CSU just got a big grant for hydrogen fuel research, which you guys talked about the last monthly meeting. And so it seems like it would be really goofy to have all this kind of the collegiate level hydrogen work and not have any sort of public and educational backing to it as well, if that makes sense. So that's where we're coming from. We've been very successful at competitions like this in the past. Our last, we do one with wind energy. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Kid Wind. We are CSU sponsors the two events that happened in this coming year, this last year. One here at my home at the Energy Institute up in Fort Collins, and then one down at the CSU Spur campus. Both of those we had, I think there were 14 different schools and about 500 to 600 kids involved with that, which was wildly popular beyond what I was hoping for, and created a slew of good problems to have all of a sudden. So we're kind of hoping that, wind energy, I think, is fantastic, and we've been doing this competition for years, but it seems like the next big step would be hydrogen and then storage. And so competitions work. The kiddos who are getting involved in this are really interested. I've heard from tech teachers that they're like, yeah, we can get into certifications and stuff like that, but they want to push themselves and be creative with it. And I think this would be a great opportunity to do so. I am happy to take any questions, or if you guys are wanting to connect with my program in any way, or are looking to see what we do with hydrogen when we teach students, I'm happy to answer all those questions or connect with you and your organizations to kind of further things along. We do run a mobile lab. It's getting more and more complicated for schools to take field trips. I don't know if you've ever been to the Energy Institute, but it is pretty swanky. So our idea was to take that out into the real world. And so that's the other kind of half of my job, is programming for schools. So if you're interested in joining the so-called mobile classroom wagon, we are happy to have you. There's plenty of room. So a big 20-foot trailer, plenty of room. Very hard to park. So,
well,
on
thank
that
you.
note, other than that, Brian brought up everything with the car thing, and that was the other thing I was going to present on. He did a much better job than I did. So
Well, thanks, Mike. Let's see if there's any questions. I've got a couple other points we can probably make, but I want to make sure that anybody who wants to make any comments or ask some questions has that opportunity. So open the floor up if anybody would like to know a little bit more or have some comments.
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. Is that program funded, or say, for example, if District 8 down here in Fountain were to take that up, would that come with funding, or would they have to come out with their own funds?
You want me to take that, Mike?
Sure.
Yeah. So the way that this typically works, and this program has been going for a number of years, and so Horizon has experience with how they raise money for everything. I may be getting a little ahead of my slides, but to sponsor a team, which is 5 students in a car, that's a team, that costs about $6,000 plus tax and shipping and things like that. Now, typically we would try to find some corporate sponsors, and we've already got some that are interested to underwrite that. A lot of times, the way it works out, and I don't think Nicola is on the call. The way that works out is that maybe the first team is corporate sponsor, and then another team at that school, the students will do some things to raise, like Girl Scouts sell cookies and things to try to raise some of that. But definitely, we don't put the burden of the cost on this on CSU or necessarily on the schools. I mean, we want to promote it. Nobody's trying to make money off of this specifically. So yeah, we're reaching out, trying. Susan, if you can shoot me an email just saying, hey, here's a school, we ought to, at least talk to science teacher, principal, or somebody there. Let them know that this is going on. Try to get a little bit of interest going. Yeah. So,
It's
um,
also,
go ahead.
right, if I could throw in here, it's also a bit of a chicken or egg thing, because if we get these teams, then there'll be the need for the sponsorship. If that
Mhm.
makes sense.
Yeah.
But and so if we get them concurrently going, then it's like, oh well, I would love to acquire them, but it doesn't seem like you have any teams. So yeah, and then if you put a face behind it, it's a lot easier to give money to. That's been my with our other competition that we worked with. So that's been my advice.
Yeah, Mike, that's such a good point. I mean, I've always found in my life, just do it. Just start, say you're going to do it, and it is recursive. I mean, like our whole issue of getting hydrogen fuel stations and hydrogen vehicles. I mean, there's several things that kind of have to happen together, and one thing starts to move, and you start breaking the log jam or the ice jam or whatever, and things start moving. So we're moving out. I mean, CSU is still thinking about this, so to speak, and we've got some schools that are thinking about it. We've got some sponsors that are interested. But typically, the way this would work is that you'd have somebody like CSU that would host, that would own the track, so to speak, because these tracks are big. I mean, they cover at least a basketball court's worth of area. There's a big carpet that lays out, and then there's also some timing equipment, but that would be supplied by Horizon. They would bring that to the race. And so, Mike and I have talked about this. The thought is, well, maybe we hold the race in Fort Collins, because that would be an opportunity for the students, whether they're coming in from Grand Junction or Colorado Springs or Denver, whatever, to see the campus in addition to competing in the race. Plus, it'd give them a chance to go somewhere. But obviously, we would have some preliminary races at the different schools. For example, a school's got 2 teams. Well, they want to practice and race against each other. They wouldn't use the official track, but we could certainly have something set up for them to be able to practice on. So yeah, good point, Mike. This is a recursive process, and we're digging in. We're going to make this thing happen. We're hoping that this fall semester we can get this going, and then possibly have a race at the end of the semester just before Christmas. So we'll see. That's kind of sporty, but that's okay. You got to have a goal, right? So other questions or comments, and I've got actually a little bit more information on this, so we'll continue with. But wanted to get this out, get people thinking about it, try to stir up a little bit of interest, and we need to know points of contact. And that's one of my upcoming slides, is to get some help from everybody on the call. Well, Mike, I'm really impressed with what CSU does. I mean, it's not all just classroom and book learning, especially with the Energy Institute. I know some of the people on the call have probably been there, but the Energy Institute is a real hands-on engineering um, force, I guess I'd have to say. They're in an old power building, which is why it's called the powerhouse, but that was added on to with a LEED certified building. And it's more than just professors, right, Mike? I mean, there's engineers, technicians. They're up there doing, real research and real work. I think the main purpose of the Energy Institute is to basically support um, research with the facility, the people, the equipment, the knowledge to do that. I don't know, Mike, if you want to make a little bit more of a pitch for the Energy
Oh,
Institute with that, but
sure. So it has, we just recently kind of went through a mission statement kind of thing. And so one of the big pushes is bringing things to scale. So a lot of our researchers not only deal with the small scale applications of the science they're looking at, they're also looking at how to make it up to scale. So recently we have a researcher who is specifically looking at industrial heaters and getting them off of natural gas and onto electric. And so he's partnering up with New Belgium in Fort Collins there, which is just like a walk away from our facility to change all of their boilers into electric boilers in the next 5-10 years here. Any of those ideas that we have students who are freshmen who come in, or sorry, we're supposed to call them first years now. We have first year students who come in and they're out there tinkering with these the giant Bessemer natural gas pipeline engines, because we very much believe that you need to get out there and you need to handle things, and what better way to learn them with somebody watching you as you know, hopefully don't blow up the building, which hasn't happened yet. But
don't say
the other
yet, Mike.
no, the other engineering building, they had a little too much fun with lithium batteries and had a small fire. But yeah, they learned a lot, so that was good. The Energy Institute connects with big businesses too. Sorry, little businesses. We have a variety of grad students who've gone on to make their own clean energy kind of sector businesses that function in something called the Innosphere, which is our connected kind of business realm that deals with all this. Dr. Wilson's been at this since the 90s, and he's very passionate that it's not just it's not an ivory tower kind of building. It's very much a, oh, you want to come in? Let's go look at the engines, right? And so if you guys want to come, I'm happy to show you around. You probably want my ambassadors. They do a much better job of the tour than I do, but yeah, it's like Brian said, it's a converted coal power plant. So we kept the old smokestacks and turned them into vertically oriented wind
Wind
vanes.
turbine?
Wind turbine. Thank you. Jeez, my mind is not working today. Yeah, we've got a big old hydrogen fuel cell electrolyzer that we just got from, gosh, I don't remember where it's from, but super big. Everybody's very excited about it. Yeah, we do a lot of work with systems engineering as well, and kind of figuring out where things connect from, one point to another to make sure that, we have length of life with all these technologies. Yeah. Anything from, reclaiming hydrogen from agriculture to figuring out if we can use algae as a fuel cell, to figuring out the best way to make clean air quality for houses built in the 2000s. It's all there. So
Yeah, very impressive. So thanks, Mike. All right. At this point, as far as the student racing and so forth, any other questions or comments or questions maybe even about the Energy Institute? No? All right. Well, thank you, Mike. And I'm sure you're going to be on a few more times here as we move and hopefully progress with this and find some interested students and some good sponsors to help underwrite this as well. So,
I guess
Brian,
yeah.
this is Tony Vico. I do have a question of you and Mike. I'm with Hydrogen on Demand Technologies. I've already met with and chatted with Brian in the past. The question I have is this. we are in real world applications of hydrogen assist and hydrogen fuel generation. We actually have a design now in play for a hydrogen fuel station for a municipality here in California. I'm in Washington, down in California. And also, we're in the design phase for a hydrogen power station for another location in a different state. I'm curious about the grant that you've been awarded for the creation of a hydrogen fuel station and whether or not there's an opportunity for us to work with you.
Well, what the grant is, we did a proposal back last fall, and it was awarded January 11th. And what it's for, it's from the Department of Transportation, Federal Highway Administration, and it's money to build 3 fuel stations that are going to be actually not on the campuses of CSU, but affiliated with CSU. So there'll be one in Fort Collins, one in Denver, because there's the CSU Spur campus at the National Western site, which is near the intersection of I-25 and I-70. And then, of course, the third fuel station will be at the Fort Collins campus, right at the powerhouse up in Fort Collins. But those will be on-site electrolysis, so that's all taken care of, and they'll be self-contained modular fuel stations, probably at least initially 2 40-foot containers and 1 20-foot container, completely self-contained with compression storage, electrolyzers, and all that. So that's pretty well sewn up. So they won't be needing any hydrogen supply. It's going to be made on site. So does that answer your question?
Actually, all of our designs are using electrolyzers to produce hydrogen on site as well.
So your company, do you produce just like not off the shelf, but like a turnkey electrolyzer itself? I mean, are you in the business of selling the electrolyzers, or is it a little more than that?
We have a PEM cell driven electrolyzer using only electricity and steam distilled water.
Mhm.
We have the patents on that. I'm not sure if I understood the
Well,
question.
Well, because the plan is for these three fuel stations to purchase an electrolyzer from
Yes.
somebody like a Verde or Omium or one of those, and so
Right.
that would be a purchased item, but it would be
Right.
basically a standalone electrolyzer, and they're looking at 210 kilograms per day capacity on that.
We have we do sell the electrolyzer component. The design that we have for that fuel station is for 260 kilograms
Yeah, so
of
same.
renewable energy. Yeah, so it's a similar footprint. For the power station, you have to come up with a design that will support 36,000 kilograms.
Mhm. Now, Tony,
By the way, our technology is scalable. So
oh yes, of course. Now, when you say power station, I'm picturing a electric generator that's using hydrogen. You mean something else by that?
no, that's exactly what we mean.
Oh, okay, okay,
This is
yeah,
for a community that wants to power its island operations several months a year using hydrogen.
interesting. Well, Tony, I tell you what, why don't you and I maybe take this as a side discussion, and
That's fine.
maybe there's an opportunity here even for you to come back to the group here and tell the group about what you're doing and so forth. Certainly
I was
do.
just curious,
Yeah,
since you're moving in that direction and we're doing the same thing. So
yeah. Well,
thank you. I appreciate it.
yeah, there's a number of us, and the Colorado Hydrogen Network is out there to support everybody, and especially because at this point in the development of this market, I think the more people you have that are out there putting fuel stations in or whatever it is, that is a rising tide. I think that floats everybody's boat. So I think it helps all of us to kind of cooperate, try to collaborate, and try to move this market ahead. All right. Well, as I said earlier, we'd like to try to get help from the stakeholders in the Colorado Hydrogen Network to, first of all, identify some schools. Now, if you have a teacher that you know, or maybe you have a student that knows of science teachers or can recommend their names or principals, if you can provide us with some information, just send that to me, especially email. We can get in contact with them, let them know what we're doing, what's out there, and just see, if they're interested. And even if you have a school, like, Susan, you mentioned a school, but maybe you don't know of a point of contact there, let us know. Because I think once we start letting people know that this is happening and it's available, I think there'll be a lot of interest out there. And then, of course, the other thing we need some funding for this. So sponsorship is tax deductible. And as I mentioned earlier, a team, which is basically 5 students in a car, costs about $6,000, and that's for the car and the hardware, the curriculum, the support. There's a certain amount of support that goes along with that, as far as having telecons and things to bring the teacher and the students up to speed. And then we're going to need about $11,000 to acquire the track and the carpet, which is a one-time expense. Obviously, that would eventually wear out, but it should be good for a number of years. And we're at this point in time thinking that CSU would hold on to that, store it while it's not being used and so forth, and then also provide a venue like a gymnasium or something that we could set this up for the race, because the track itself is fairly large, but then of course you want the spectators, the parents and the friends and everyone else that is going to participate in the race event. And of course, anybody who sponsors this is going to receive some kind of promotional recognition, whether it's a logo on the signage and printed material. I don't know that the cars would necessarily have logos on them, but you get the idea that we want to make sure that we recognize any of the companies or the donors for their help. So I thought this was interesting. There's a number of quotes here on the right in this gray area, the dark gray area here. The student commented, it's fun to build an RC hydrogen car with classmates. I mean, just think how much more engaging that is as a student to be actually, building something and seeing it succeed versus just getting something out of a textbook. And teachers said, yeah, the students are really interested in this project because of the race at the end. Principal said this is the type of learning experience that they really couldn't get from textbooks. And then Toyota is a real big sponsor out in California. Hopefully we can get some sponsorship from them here as well. But, they said it's a great way to expose high school students to the opportunities and engineering challenges. And again, I'll come back to that. You design it, you build it, you find the bugs, and you redesign it. And of course, there's a certain amount of math and science to be used along the way. So really a worthwhile program, I think. All right. So we have one of our first sponsors has raised their hand, Sean Daniel, who I think Sean presented at the last meeting. And let's see, I don't know, Sean, are you on? Trying fumbling for my list here. I'm just looking. Yeah, it looks like maybe Sean is not on, but he got in contact with me right away after the last meeting and said, "Hey, Spark is interested in sponsoring a team and probably even a little bit more. So maybe something toward the track or whatever." But Spark, for those of you who don't know, there's their website. They build, as you can see there, the high durability anion exchange membranes and so forth. So really appreciate that. And that's we've only been at this a few weeks, so it's great to see somebody step up right away. All right. We also have some interest with the Grand Junction Central High School. Now, last October, and I think Jim Marshall, you're on. I was out in Grand Junction, did a presentation at an energy event that was out there, and one of the things that Jim Marshall and Ray Pilcher said was, hey, we feel so left out here in the Western Slope. Everything happens along the Front Range. Please don't forget about us. So one of the first things I did was I reached out to Jim and to Ray, and I said, hey, we're going to do this racing. I think it'd be fantastic if we could get one or more teams out at Grand Junction to participate in this. So I don't know, Jim, I don't want to put you on the spot, but do you have any comments that you'd like to make? And we're still working on this. We haven't worked out any kind of details yet, but there is at least some interest out there.
No, Brian, I've seen Nicola's correspondence with the STEM group at Central High School, and I haven't seen any response yet, but I don't know whether I'm in the loop or not. So I reached back out to Nicola this afternoon to find out whether she's been in connection with them. So I'll keep you abreast as I learn more.
Okay, well, for everybody else's benefit, Nicola Weiss is the executive director of H2GP Foundation, and I said I'm on the board. And Nicola is just up to her elbows in the racing. I mean, several of her kids are taking part in this, helping with the race. Nicola gets out there, sets up the timing and the track and everything else. So she's very hands-on, and she's been bouncing all over the place. She was just in Chicago to get a race set up there, and I know she's up in Sacramento. She actually lives in the LA area. So, Jim, I haven't seen a response back yet from the STEM team at the high school, but it's only been a few days. So this is developing. They may decide at the end of the day not to do it or whatever, but I just was really encouraged by this early response.
And what they've told me is they're preparing for the end of the school year, so they're quite busy right now. But I thought if I don't hear back from anybody in the next few days or so, I'll just drive out to the high school and meet them in person and find out what's going on. So and find out their level of interest.
Okay.
So,
All right. Good deal. Well, that's all we can ask. And certainly I can jump in the car and come out there if necessary. It's a bit of a trek out to Grand Junction, about 3.5 hours from Floyd Hill here. So it's definitely an overnight trip, but
it's 15 minutes for me, so
yeah.
to the high school, so that's no big deal.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Jim, and to you and Ray for engaging
Sure.
with the high school and getting this going. I think it'd be so exciting if we could get a team from Grand Junction and maybe somebody from Pueblo or even Trinidad, Colorado Springs. Obviously, we'll have some Fort Collins teams and Denver teams, but heck, let's get out to some of these schools and really give these students an opportunity to have fun with this.
Now, we're just happy you thought of us here in
Oh,
Western Slope, Brian.
yeah, I'm thinking about you guys all the time out there, believe me.
Good.
All right, so let's shift gears here a little bit. Well, actually, let me pause for a second. I think I'm guilty of not letting people comment enough, which is a little bit tricky to do on Zoom. But has anybody got comments, questions, or anything, or even just send me an email after the meeting is fine too. But we've got plenty of time today, so I want to give people a chance to talk if anybody's got any comments. No? Well, feel free to interrupt at any time. Absolutely. All right, so we'd already mentioned this so-called Charging and Fueling Infrastructure, or CFI grant. And again, this was put out by the Department of Transportation through the Federal Highway Administration. And this is a grant program to deploy both electric vehicle charging and alternative fueling, which of course includes hydrogen, this infrastructure. So as mentioned a couple times already, the grant was awarded to us here in Colorado on January 11th by the Federal Highway Administration. And the project team, a lot of you have seen this before, but just to refresh everybody, Colorado State University is going to be the prime contractor on this, since they've got the expertise with these big type of contracts, doing the financial reporting and basically managing the project. New Day Hydrogen, which I was affiliated with early on, helped get that company started. I have since stepped back from that. I still have some money invested in them, but I'm not involved at all in their decision-making or day-to-day operations anymore. It was just too much with the Colorado Hydrogen Network and the podcast, plus the company. It just there weren't that many hours in the day. But New Day Hydrogen is going to be the owner of the Denver and Pueblo fuel stations, which will be standalone modular stations. And the Fort Collins station is going to be partly inside the powerhouse, partly outside. That's going to be basically owned by CSU. And then I think it's probably still being worked out, but New Day Hydrogen will help operate that station. Expecting to go to the company called EPC. Their website's there, EPC4H2. They're up in Cheyenne, Wyoming, as the basically the designer and builder of those fuel stations. Although, as I mentioned earlier, some of the components will probably be purchased. Like they may just go out and purchase a cargo container that has the electrolyzer already in it. A lot of the other things will be custom designed, I guess, bespoke, as the Brits would say. NREL is going to be involved. They'll be doing data collection and analysis and tracking. We felt it was important to have a third party, especially somebody like an NREL who could be looking over the shoulder, I guess, and providing independent third party analysis of how the program is going. And then I was involved. I did the outline for the proposal, wrote probably a good lion's share of that proposal. And I'll be involved a little bit with support, but basically I'm pretty busy just running the Colorado Hydrogen Network and doing the podcast. So the status on this is that the group of CSU and New Day are still in discussion with the Federal Highway Administration to basically finalize all the grant agreement. We put together a proposal and they just accepted it, but the expectation was after the fact they'd come in and say, well, you've got 5 data items, we only want 4, we need 6, or we have suggestions on how this or that's going to be handled. So that's what's ongoing right now. And we're still working to try to find fuel station sites in both Denver and Pueblo. There's been a lot of interest in Denver at the Spur campus, which those of you not that familiar with Denver, this is really near the I-25 and I-70 intersection, also called the Mousetrap in Denver. It's where the Coliseum is, as well as the National Western Stock Show. As a matter of fact, it's called the National Western Site, which, although it's not a place in town where probably people think about buying their gasoline or diesel, it is pretty centrally located. So it would make a good first location in Denver. And they're working on trying to find the exact plot of land to put that on. And then down in Pueblo, also looking there, the campus down there probably has some sites that are suitable. There's a business park as well. And so that's ongoing to actually nail that down and get those selected. And, it's because these are basically temporary fuel stations or modules that can just be brought in and set with a crane. They can also be moved later. So it's not like we're asking for permanent dedicated sites for these fuel stations. They're continuing, and this is New Day Hydrogen and a little bit the university too, working with potential fleet partners, people who are either run box trucks or like the you mentioned earlier the brewery up in Fort Collins. Those are people that have trucks, and the idea here is you go to the fleets, you say, hey, if you will agree to get a fuel cell vehicle, we'll put a fuel station in that you can use. And by the way, there's funding available through the state for these things. And so it's a bit of a recursive process, but you'd like to have those fleets lined up so that as soon as you turn your hydrogen fuel station on, you've got some customers and you're not sitting there at, zero return on investment initially. You'd like to get started right away. Then there has been a meeting, a community meeting in both Pueblo and Fort Collins to talk about what's going on, talk about this program and possible locations for the fuel stations, and still working to finalize a date for the Denver station. And I don't know if the holdup there is waiting to know exactly where the site's going to be or what that is, but that should be forthcoming, and I'll make sure that we post that in the newsletter as well as talk about that at the meeting here. And then New Day and CSU are working with EPC. Well, it's really mainly New Day for the Denver and Pueblo stations, for talking about the design and fabrication, also getting help from EPC for the environmental permits, the building permits and stuff to actually install these. And the hope is, or the plan is to have both of these ready for kickoff once the grant agreement is in place. So that's probably all I know about this process, but does anybody have any comments or any questions at this point? Okay, well, I'll keep going. We can always come back to this, of course. All right, so switching gears yet one more time, there's been a little bit more activity on the Inflation Reduction Act, the so-called Clean Hydrogen Production Tax Credit, 45V, or PTC, Production Tax Credit 45V. So I wanted to kind of review some of this information again. I presented on this back in July. Some of you may have been on that call and you may remember that, but this recent development is that April 10th, the IRS issued this supplemental notice of proposed rulemaking. And really what it's talking about is the uh, provisional emissions rate process. And so I thought this was a good opportunity to maybe go back and revisit this because this has been kind of controversial as far as the rules that are being put in place. A lot of the hydrogen producers, myself included, feel that they're really kind of off base, I think, with some of those. Oh, I'm sorry to put this up late, but there's a link if you want to go and look at this latest um, notice and see what it's about. I created a shortcut. It was a really long URL. So if you just go to tinyurl.com/45v comments 2, because we had a previous version of this, you can find out more and see possibly if you want to comment yourself. So the constraints that were put on that, Elliot's got his hand up. Elliot, go ahead. Oh, you might be on mute, Elliot. Are you there? We're not hearing you. Well, I tell you what, Elliot, I'm going to keep going. If you can go ahead, feel free to go ahead and interrupt if you get because we're not hearing you, so I'm not sure if you're on mute or what. But there were basically 3 constraints that were put on this production tax credit. One was called additionality, which was defined as using only renewable electricity production that's been recently installed. There was deliverability, and this was about the renewable electricity being nearby the hydrogen facility. So the idea there is that you'd like your source of your renewable electricity or clean electricity and your use to be on the same grid. You wouldn't want people saying, well, we're making we're making electricity in Hawaii and we're using it in New York. I mean, that's obviously that's a little bit nonsensical. And then the last one, which just absolutely gives me fits, is the so-called temporal matching, which requires that the hydrogen producers match their consumption of electricity from the grid with clean electricity production on an hourly basis. And I'm going to go through this again because this is just it's just absolute nonsense. And I've been writing letters and talking to people trying to debunk how crazy this is. And I hopefully will demonstrate that to you here in just a minute. So the problem with all of these is that these constraints almost exclude every possible hydrogen project. I mean, for example, additionality, recently installed. Well, what if you want to use a nuclear plant for your source of electricity? Well, that's really clean. I mean, it doesn't produce any greenhouse gases. I mean, there's nuclear waste, which is not clean, but it doesn't have anything to do with polluting the atmosphere. But you wouldn't be able to use it because it hasn't been recently installed. So, just a lot of these don't really make that much sense. I think there's a lot of unintended consequences. Elliot, have you got your sound going? I see your hand still up, but I haven't heard you. No? All right. Well, I'm gonna keep going here. So I'm not going to talk anymore about additionality and deliverability, but what I really want to focus in is on temporal matching because this is so onerous and it just absolutely makes no sense. So really, I think this requirement stems from a lack of understanding of the difference between power and energy. We're talking about energy. We're not talking about power. And power, of course, is defined as watts or volts times amps, and that's instantaneous. But energy is power over time. It's watt hours. So it already contains an element of time. So to say it has your energy production, your energy use have to be happening at the same time is just wrong. It's just wrong. And so um, I'm going to go through an example to try to demonstrate this. And I realize this is a hard concept to understand. It's probably akin to trying to understand calculus. It's a little bit abstract. And I think it's confused by, like I said here, the fact that people think, well, electricity is instantaneous. Well, energy is not. Energy is something that you've tracked over time to accumulate the value of it. So as I say here, quantities of energy can be exchanged in time or place, and energy can be bought and sold. So it's a commodity. Well, I think the best way to demonstrate it, this is an example. So um, the intent of the temporal matching is to make sure that the clean energy is tracked between a supplier and a user. We don't want to have people making wild claims that they got clean energy when they really didn't. And we also need to have a way to make sure that I'm sorry, that's incorrect, not the user, the producer hasn't oversold the energy to multiple users. Sorry about the typo there. And then we also need to prove that the energy quantity was what it was to determine the tax credit. There's Elliot. Hey, Elliot, go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm on my cell phone. I'm over trying to print some plat maps. I just wanted to share. This is really good stuff here, Brian. I don't know who thought up this process, but certainly somebody that's not favorable to what we're trying to accomplish with hydrogen right now. But hopefully that can get worked out with gentlemen like yourself that are making the big effort to push it through. I just wanted to say I've spent the past the most of the bulk of this afternoon earlier till now working on we have we are acquiring a piece of land in Aurora. We have a letter of intent, and the land is at 38th and Chambers. It's a little over an acre piece of land to put a 1.3 ton per day liquid hydrogen fueling station that we've ordered already from Chart Industries that will be delivered in probably December this year, maybe, give or take a month earlier or a month later. It's the same equipment that Nikola has that they're putting in out in California right now. They just received their first station delivery just in the past week or so, full station, and we're real excited about it. But our focus is the Class 8 trucks and all of that. So we have a lot of work to do yet on it, but we're real excited, and I'm just real excited because I actually walked around on the property with the realtor and we spent a lot of time this morning with the city of Aurora, and they're real positive about supporting hydrogen as a whole, and there's a lot of good promise and opportunity. So again, we still need to develop, get these customers in gear, but that's coming, I think. And we're working with two major manufacturers. One of them is Nikola, and the other we can't discuss at this point yet, but there will be a little bit trailing behind Nikola. So anyway, thought I'd pass that on.
Well, thanks, Elliot. And as you know, Elliot, I've been trying for a number of months to have you on to just maybe give an overview. So when you feel the time is right and you're not tipping your hand and giving away trade secrets or anything, maybe give us a little bit more information. Now, 38th and Chambers, is that right off of I-70 somewhere?
It is right off of I-70.
Yeah. Okay. Fantastic.
So
That's good.
It's a fairly sizable financial commitment, and we're working on grant stuff for what we're doing too, and separate of the program that you guys got involved with New Day, which I'm really excited for that all to occur. So we're really friendly and positive for New Day, and we want to see that be successful. So it's a great step in the right direction. Our equipment is transportable. It's not like mobile on wheels, but it's a transportable skid mounted facility. It's the smallest one Chart's doing, but we're probably going to be able to provide capacity for between 15 to 25 trucks per day, depending upon volumes.
Yeah. Well, you know, Elliot, I 101% support what you're doing, want to help with that. And as I said earlier, I think if, you know, B&G Clean Fuels is putting in a station and New Day's putting in a station, that's twice as good, you know, because
Absolutely.
now the public and companies can look around and say, hey, there's two people out there doing this. There's two stations, you know, not like 1,000 gas stations, but it's definitely a good thing.
It's great progress and long way to go. But I think our challenges as an industry are getting the cost of the trucks down and getting the cost of fuel down. So we're all working on solutions there, and they will come. It may take a little while, but they will come.
Well, you know, change happens exponentially. And when you're at the
Right.
bottom of that curve and it looks like it's flat and it's not changing at all, and you're just watching it, you think nothing's happening. And all of a sudden, one day you hit the knee of the curve and it takes off. And so that's
Right.
we're all looking forward to.
Yeah, the exciting thing is you know, my time this morning with the city of Aurora was very exciting. They were gung ho, and they're going to help us in any way they can. So they want to put their brand on this, so we're excited to let them do that. So, but as you mentioned, we've been working on this for 4 years,
Yep.
and you know, to the public, well, it's a new thing, but you know, it's just taken that much time to evolve this to this point. So, a lot of hard work and a lot more hard work to come. And again, the bottom line is raising capital and getting the cost of equipment and machinery, you know, down.
Oh,
So
yeah. Yeah. The prices will drop once we start getting things up to
I
scale.
think so too. So
Yeah.
anyway, I wanted to share that. You know, my business partners online here, Dr. Afsal, and you know, we're working really hard to get this thing to the next level. And I think, you know, a lot of progress happened just today. So
Well, congratulations and good luck. And please let me know anything I can do to help.
well, we appreciate what you're doing, and we're very supportive of anything we can do to help you. Wish we could get into place to get involved in that sponsorship of that event. We're not quite there yet. So,
No, I understand. I understand. So, all
all
right.
right, thank you.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Elliot. All right. So I'm going to switch gears back again and get back to talking about this whole idea of this so-called temporal matching. And so you can see this is really what the intent was. So we do need a way to track this. We can't just leave this completely open and you know, not tracked, I guess I'll say. But is there an alternative to telling both the generator as well as the user of this electricity that they have to do it at the same time? All right, so really all it takes is matching over a billing cycle. And typically a billing cycle is a month, right? I mean, we have electric meters on our homes and they're racking up our energy use, which is you know, kilowatt hours in the case of home use, and we pay our bill every month. So that really is already tracked, and you know, it's documented, and we certainly could use a window of a month instead of an hour to track this. And I'm going to explain really how that works and why that's possible. But we also need some kind of a contract between the seller and the buyer of this energy to make sure that the energy is not being oversold. And there are things like power purchase agreements or renewable energy contracts, or just even some kind of a vanilla type of contract that says, I'm putting this energy onto the grid and this other person's pulling it off. And you can look at our meters every month to determine if the quantity's matched. And By the way, I'm swearing, on my diploma that I'm not selling this energy to two different people as well. So there's certainly a way to track it there. And like I say here, the goal is to document that the clean energy generated and used is clean. Only the clean energy that's generated and used is clean for the credit. Now, there may be cases where the load, in this case, maybe an electrolyzer, needs more energy than the clean source provided, but that would simply be excluded from the tax credit. So we're not trying to say that the load is using only the amount of energy that the clean source produced. What we're trying to say is that only the quantity of energy produced and used that matches applies for the credit. And I think that's where a lot of people just really run amok. All right, so this is hard to, I think, understand in the abstract sense. So what I want to do is go through a model here. Now, this is a slide that I showed back in July of here's our electric grid, right? We've got, power plants or whatever that are putting electricity onto the grid, and we've got various users out there, businesses, homes, whatever, using that energy. And that has to match, right? If you've got too much energy going onto the grid, you're going to have voltage surges, and if you've got too little, you're going to have voltage drops. So those have to equal. Now, what if we do have some kind of a renewable or a clean source that I'm showing here is a wind turbine, and that's putting some energy onto the grid. And we've got, they have a contract with, say, a fuel station that's going to pull that energy off the grid to make hydrogen. And they're planning on buying and selling that certain amount of electricity. Now, this could be a month or whatever, but we'll say it's a billing cycle, so it's a month. All right, so what if, and by the way, this could happen anytime during the billing cycle because, well, and I'll show you that in a minute. I'm getting ahead of my skis here a little bit. So let's say that at some time during the billing cycle, the electrolyzer has to shut off, but the wind is blowing, so the source is continuing to put their energy onto the grid. In this case, I'm showing it as 1 gigawatt hour. And let's see, I'd probably go to my laser pointer here. That probably help. So they're putting this energy on, but it's not being pulled off. Well, what's going to happen is in order to keep the grid balanced, the utility is going to have to throttle down their power plant to 299 gigawatt hours in that billing cycle because they've got this 1 gigawatt here, gigawatt hour, I'm sorry, which meets the 300 gigawatt hours. So what happened was this guy produced clean energy, and somebody over here, just luck of the draw, got clean energy. So the point, though, is that we decarbonized 1 gigawatt hour of energy production. All right, now that resulted in that reduction of dirty energy. So what if now another part of the month, the wind just quit blowing, but our friendly neighborhood fuel station still needs to make hydrogen. So they're pulling a gigawatt hour off. Well, now we've got to ramp up the dirty to 301 because we've got to meet this need of 300 here and 1 gigawatt hour here. All right, so they actually ended up getting some dirty energy, but if you look at, come on, if I can get the slide to produce or to move ahead here, we had 1 gigawatt hour of clean energy in the previous slide. Here we've got 1 gigawatt hour of dirty energy. They basically cancel out. So even though the source and the load didn't use that energy at the same time, it had the same effect as if it had happened at the same time. And this is why this hourly matching is such a fallacy. It doesn't have to happen at the same time, but it does have to be tracked, and it does have to happen within some defined period of time, whether it's, I'd say a month, because we already track our energy on a monthly basis. And it also gives flexibility during that whole month of producing and using this same quantity. So I hope that's clear. I always feel like I'm struggling a little bit to make this a lucid explanation, but hopefully you see where I'm coming from on this. So the net result, of course, just to kind of summarize here, is that if clean energy is produced and it exceeds the hydrogen load, dirty energy is decreased to keep the grid balanced. And I basically just showed you this. When the load exceeds renewable energy, dirty energy is increased. But basically what we've done is we've exchanged energy and time during that billing cycle. So when, of course, when they're equal, no non-renewable energy is used, other than what the grid would have produced in the absence of the hydrogen source or the hydrogen load in the clean source. And so this is why I'm saying hourly matching is unnecessary. We track things now on a monthly basis. We ought to just continue with that. That's certainly a broad enough window to make this work for the renewable energy producers as well as the hydrogen generators. But yet it's flexible enough to meet everybody's needs. So, the billing length could be anything. You could say, well, let's track it over a year, but I think a month is a reasonable period of time because we're used to commonly, billing monthly, and so that's a good interval. So I'm hearing a little bit of background sound. Did somebody have a comment?
Yes, I did, Brian.
Oh yeah, Keith. I'm going to address what you talked about before about curtailment and stuff. Is that what you're?
I'll wait for it.
All right. So I'm glad you could join, Keith. I know you had some other things going on, but all right. So let me kind of keep going here. So Keith had brought up back in July when I first presented this. He said, well, there's grids out in California and other places that have a lot of renewable energy coming online, and they're having to curtail all the time. So what if the grid can't accept this clean energy? For example, now let me switch back to the other slide. Sorry, I got to jump back here. But what about this case here where you've got renewable energy coming onto the grid, but maybe that's all the grid has is renewable energy, and they can't let this come on because they're already meeting their demand. So what if that's the case? Bear with me. I got to scoot forward here. So basically what'll happen is that clean energy source will be told, sorry, by the utility, we can't accept your energy right now. We've got to curtail you. But of course, their electric meter is going to reflect the fact that they were not able to put that energy onto the grid. Now, if the load ended up needing more energy than the clean source produced in the billing cycle, yeah, they'd have to pull energy from dirty sources. But because you're metering what the clean source is putting onto the grid, and you're metering what the hydrogen load or whatever is pulling off of the grid, you know what those amounts are. And at the end of the month, if the say the hydrogen producer used more energy than the clean source provided, that just simply means that there's some energy there that doesn't qualify for the production tax credit. Because after all, that's what we're after here, is how much clean energy went on the grid and was pulled off the grid, and the amounts that match qualify for the production tax credit. And certainly with a contract and with a meter reading, that's going to be defined. So I don't know, Keith, do you have some more comments at that point, or did I maybe address what your worry was?
No, I think that was a good attempt, Brian. The challenge is I think there are often laws in place that require that the renewables be purchased first. And so it's kind of put in place to make sure that if you make the investment, the utility is not going to say, yeah, we don't need it, we're not going to pay you for it. And so this is why California has changed, and they may reverse it, but they've changed their rules so that you've got to basically have your own storage system to be able to qualify for the higher rates. If you don't, they'll take it when they need it, but they're not going to pay you much for it. And so if you look in the news recently, the amount of solar being installed in California is greatly decreased. There are a lot of jobs being lost. It's actually a tragedy because there was a lot of momentum there. So, I think this is something, and I placed in chat the kind of the current data from Cal ISO, and you can see, this month alone, how many megawatt hours were curtailed compared to last year, and it just keeps growing and growing. And as we go from 15 to 20% up to 100%, ultimately, the electrolyzers are not gonna be in the noise anymore. And so I guess that's the main argument for getting it right now is not saying we're gonna be in the noise, don't worry about us, but, hey, we're gonna be a big part of the economy, let's plan for it. And I don't, condone or support the lack of incentive for this, but I do support the end goal of making sure that we are producing enough renewable power to truly make clean hydrogen.
Well, we all agree because, as Franz Westenbrink has said so many times, if it wasn't for the need to decarbonize, we wouldn't even bother with hydrogen. And so, it's silly to say we're trying to convert over to hydrogen to, clean up the atmosphere when we're going to make it dirtier by producing hydrogen. Nobody wants that. And the we don't want the end to justify the means, maybe put it that way. Um, so, it's like that old quote, by the time or if we label something as a necessary evil, it starts to become more and more necessary and less evil. And so, so we definitely don't want that. But Keith, I agree. There's a whole host of other issues out there about trying to produce and utilize clean energy and how does that work? And we have to change rules about public utilities commissions, and the grids have got to switch from being just energy suppliers to energy brokers, and a lot of growing pains with that. But I don't really think that it has a place in this legislation about how you get the tax credit. I don't think this hourly matching solves anything, and it hurts a lot. And as I think I pointed out here, there's other ways to do this. So
Agreed.
yeah. So at any rate, I just get so uptight about this because I just think it's silly. It just shows a lack of understanding of how electricity works, frankly. So anyway, I will get off of my soapbox. But I wanted to bring this up again because it does seem, in spite of all of the information I'm trying to put out there, that this whole myth persists. All right. So, in summary, basically what we need is 4 criteria. We need some kind of a contract between the renewable energy or clean energy source and the hydrogen generator. Obviously, metering at the source and load, which of course you would have. And then this data is collected over a billing cycle, probably a month. And then obviously the source and the load need to be connected to the same electrical grid. You need to be able to draw a line between those. So this will assure that renewable energy is tracked, and you're not giving a production tax credit where it's not due. And doing it this way would be certainly achievable for the hydrogen generators. And I did do a podcast on this. If you want to go back to the July 7, 2023 and listen to that podcast and hear this explanation one more time, you'd certainly do that. Anybody else comments or questions? Let's see how we're doing on time here. Oh, quarter till. I was so worried we wouldn't have enough information, but so anyway, that's it on that. Happy to continue this conversation if you want to send me an email or we get on a call or something if I've overlooked something or you have more questions or just want to kick it around.
Hey, Brian, would you be
Yeah.
able to go back to that slide that had the tiny URL link?
Oh, let's see. That was back a bit. I've got since I've got animations here, I've got to, it's back a few slides, wasn't it? Here we are.
Oh, that's it.
Yeah. Like I said, it was a really long URL and just too hard for people to take notes. And we don't have a hyperlink. Maybe someday on Zoom they'll have that where you can actually click on your screen to go to this.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for going back.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So I've got, in addition to information, I try to make sure these meetings are a little bit entertaining. So I came across something which I found a little bit amusing this week. So just for fun, which element won? Well, I didn't mean for that to rhyme, but I guess it does. But I'm very, very familiar with Element One that's up in Boulder that does the hydrogen detectors and sensors, had them on a podcast. And you can see their website is elem1.com. But there's also an Element One Energy, which I've been trying to get them on to do a presentation, and we've always had conflicts for the meeting here. But their Element One Energy, they build electrolyzers. They're in Colorado Springs, and you can see their website. Then I just got a contact through LinkedIn, somebody with Element One Technologies. And so I'm not real clear from their website exactly what they're doing there. They seem to be producing hydrogen as well as some kind of fuel blends with hydrogen, and they're up in Salt Lake City. So that's three Element Ones. Then here's another one, Element Numeral One, which is building hydrogen and charging stations, and they're out of Bend, Oregon. So besides that, there's apartment buildings that are Element One and labs that are Element One. I even found a sound design company that does Element One, as well as consulting companies. So I just thought that was amusing that we've got so many companies with very similar name out there. So just for a little bit of humor. All right. This is something I covered in the newsletter, and that is that the much awaited Honda CRV, that's a plug-in hybrid fuel cell vehicle, has come out. And I was so disappointed to see the minuscule, I'm going to rant a little bit here. The minuscule range, 270 miles. I don't know how they think they're going to compete with battery vehicles with that. And it's only 29 miles on a battery. I looked, the typical commute in Colorado is around 30 miles. So, I mean, you barely get to work or school on this thing on battery alone. And it's got, of course, 240 miles on hydrogen, which is okay. But the other very disappointing thing is the CRV. I have a Honda CRV. It's gasoline, and it's four-wheel drive or all-wheel drive. Well, this version is only front-wheel drive. And okay, I know what they're doing. I think they're targeting the California market because that's the only fuel cell market out there right now. But, and I'm going to tell this to Honda as soon as I can get the chance, for Colorado, this vehicle's got to have at least 400-mile range, which is comparable to that's what my gasoline car gets. I get 31 miles per gallon all the time, 400 miles of range, and it needs to have a bigger battery. And that's for a couple reasons. First of all, early days, before there's a lot of hydrogen stations, we'd all like to be able to charge this thing at home and do most of our errands with it. And so you're going to need in Colorado, especially with hills and so forth. You know, I've got to come up I-70. I come up 2,500 feet from Denver to get to my house. And so it needs a bigger battery. But besides that, those of you that have a battery vehicle know that if you drive from Denver to, say, Silverthorne, you get there with almost an empty battery. And then when you go back home, you charge it back up. So there's a lot of regenerative braking that's done in Colorado. And so we need bigger batteries for that so that we can recover that energy and not be totally relying on just using hydrogen the whole time. And the other thing it needs, if you look at the statistics in Colorado, 72 to 73% of vehicles sold here are all-wheel drive. This thing's got to have all-wheel drive. So I was very disappointed. I feel like Honda just really stepped in it with this design. I don't think it's very competitive, and it's certainly not going to be in Colorado when we start using Elliott's and New Day Hydrogen's fuel stations here. So I am working to try to get in touch with Honda for a number of reasons. I want to get them to sponsor some cars here when we do get fuel stations. But I certainly will give them a piece of my mind on their CRV. I don't know. Anybody any comments or questions on that? Okay, probably enough said, but rant ends, as they say. All right, and then an update on the podcast, and hopefully all of you are enjoying that, and certainly let me know if you have ideas. I'm getting a lot of people contacting me now, different companies around the world that have heard the podcast and want to be on it. I've got a recording coming up with Plug Power, with their chief technical officer, which, as it turns out, he and I worked at Honeywell for about 10 years at the same time. We didn't really know each other, but that was down in New Mexico. So small world, I guess. You got to be careful who you tick off, I would say. So, all right, we've got a few minutes left. Any comments, questions, anything from anybody? Don't be shy. I'll give it just one more second in case anybody's fumbling for the mute, if you'd like to make any comments. All right. Well, thank you everybody for your support and attendance, and we'll try to keep moving this whole thing forward. I think at that point we'll adjourn. So thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
You bet.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, Keith. Need to save the chat here. Here we go. Always have trouble finding that.